Attorney General Pam Bondi's first big oversight hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Nearly 5 hours of it.
Yeah, this was really something. A confrontation, you could say. It's been building for months, all this scrutiny over how the administration's using federal law enforcement power.
Absolutely. And our sources, they detail a session that wasn't just about asking questions. It felt more like a direct challenge, happening right when concerns about federal power are really peaking.
Right, so our mission here, for you listening, is to kind of cut through those 5 hours and get to the core conflict.
Exactly. We've boiled it down, found 3 main flashpoints that really define the day, and they show just how divided things are at the Justice Department right now.
Okay, so first, these huge allegations about the DOJ being politicized, even weaponized, that was central. Second, this whole controversy around Jeffrey Epstein's files and how they're being handled.
Always controversial.
And third, the really, really heated arguments over immigration enforcement, specifically focusing on operations in Chicago.
Got it. So, setting the scene. The tension was palpable right from the start, wasn't it? The main issue, pushed hard by Democrats, was this feeling that the Justice Department isn't impartial anymore.
Yeah, that's the big picture worry. Critics are basically saying it's been turned into a tool, go after your enemies, protect your friends, political retribution.
And the sharpest point of conflict, it seems, came pretty quickly, around her talks with the president.
Almost immediately. It centered on her just refusing to say whether she'd discussed any specific cases or investigations with President Trump.
So when they asked, directly, did you talk about the Coney prosecution with him? What did she say?
Her line was, quote, "I'm not going to discuss any conversations I did or did not have with the president." Just a flat refusal.
Okay, but hang on. Isn't that sometimes standard? Executive branch keeping internal discussions private. Why was this refusal such a big deal here?
Well, critics say in this context, absolutely not standard. The norm, the expectation, is that the AG maintains a clear firewall between the White House and criminal investigations for impartiality.
To avoid political influence, basically.
Exactly. So her blanket refusal, no matter the topic, was immediately taken by critics as, confirming their worst fears, that the DOJ is taking direction from the White House on sensitive cases.
And those fears, they weren't just theoretical, right? They tied it to specific decisions the DOJ made. Let's dig into that a bit. What specific actions fueled this perception?
Okay, yeah, the timeline is crucial here. They pointed to the indictment of James Comey, the former FBI director.
Right.
The key thing, it happened just days after President Trump publicly demanded action against him. The timing looked politically motivated, not legally driven.
So coincidence or cause and effect? That's the question they were raising.
Precisely. And then there was a flip side. Investigations being closed, like the one into Tom Homan, the former border czar. He's a key Trump ally. Closing that down looked like potential favoritism.
So pursuing rivals, closing files on allies. If that's happening, that's what critics mean by weaponization, isn't it? Using the DOJ's power selectively.
Exactly. That's the core of the weaponization charge. And look, this perception, it got a huge boost from reports about that U.S. attorney in Virginia, Eastern District of Virginia.
The one who resigned abruptly.
Yes, a career prosecutor. And the report said he resigned because he objected to charging Comey and New York's Attorney General Letitia James.
Wow.
When experienced career staff, people who've been there for years, basically put their careers on the line over charging decisions, that sends a massive signal that something's wrong internally, that the institution itself might be compromised.
And the sources suggest this wasn't just 1 or 2 isolated incidents. It was more widespread.
Oh, yeah. The sources talk about dozens of senior career officials either resigning or being moved out, reassigned since Bondi took over.
Dozens. That's significant.
It is. And some former prosecutors, they actually went public, describing the place as being turned into the Department of Revenge.
The Department of Revenge. That's quite a statement. And didn't this sort of boil over publicly right before the hearing itself with that letter?
It did. Huge development. The day before she testified, nearly 300 former DOJ employees signed a public letter.
300, including career people.
Yeah, many career professionals among them. They called her leadership appalling, and they actually called on Congress to step in and restore the department's independence. That shows a really deep divide, between the political leadership and the long-term staff.
Okay, so that lays out the case from the critics pretty comprehensively. But what about the defense? How did Bondi and her Republican allies, like Senator Grassley, push back against this narrative of weaponization?
Well, they flipped the script. They framed her leadership as a necessary fix, a correction. Senator Grassley, the committee chair, started off defending the administration. He basically accused the previous Democratic leadership of weaponizing the DOJ against Trump.
So turning the accusation back around.
Exactly. And Bondi herself, she argued that her office was restoring integrity. She said the department had spent years on politically motivated investigations targeting Trump.
And her main line was about getting back to basics.
Yeah, her key phrase was, "We are returning to our core mission of fighting real crime." That was the message.
Interesting. And she didn't distance herself from the administration's political aims, did she?
Quite the opposite. She actually praised her top deputies, FBI Director Kash Patel, Deputy AG Todd Blanche, specifically for, and this is a direct quote, advancing President Trump's agenda and protecting the executive branch from judicial overreach.
Okay, advancing President Trump's agenda. That sounds, well, sounds pretty explicit. If the traditional idea is that justice should be blind, serving the law, not the president specifically, what does that statement mean for the institution?
It's a fundamental shift, potentially. I mean, when the head of the DOJ explicitly says the goal is advancing a political agenda, it suggests loyalty to the president might now officially come before loyalty to, say, established legal norms or procedures.
Which is exactly what her critics were afraid of.
Precisely. And that's why the ranking Democrat, Dick Durbin, hit back so hard. He used that historical comparison to really underscore the gravity of what he saw happening.
Right, the Nixon comparison. That was strong.
Very strong. Durbin argued the department had, quote, systematically purged career officials, undermined constitutional norms, and then he dropped the line. What has taken place since January 2025 would make even President Nixon recoil.
Wow. So that really frames the divide, doesn't it? One side sees a necessary reassertion of executive authority, maybe cleaning house. The other sees a really dangerous slide away from constitutional checks and balances. Unprecedented, even.
That's the clash, yeah. And this whole pattern, this resistance to transparency, it carried right over into the specific controversies they dug into, starting with Jeffrey Epstein's files.
Ah, yes, the Epstein files. I remember she'd made a comment earlier that sounded like she had some explosive info.
She had. She'd told Fox News before that the Epstein files were, like, literally sitting on my desk. Gave the impression she was digging into it.
But at the hearing, different story.
Totally different posture. She refused, firmly, to release any more materials. She insisted there was no, quote, client list. Dismissed all the talk about it as just salacious and politically motivated.
But the Democrats weren't just asking for gossip, were they? They had a specific question about internal procedure.
Right. It wasn't just about who knew Epstein. They asked a very specific, crucial question that went unanswered. Had the DOJ ordered the FBI to flag or maybe isolate any Epstein records that specifically mention President Trump's name?
Ah, so they were asking about potential filtering inside the system, protecting the president.
Exactly. Could there be political shielding happening within the FBI or DOJ itself? That was the core of the question.
And her response?
Same playbook as with the Comey questions. She just wouldn't discuss internal communications, put up that wall of secrecy again.
So for her critics, that just reinforces the pattern, right? Unwillingness to talk about anything politically sensitive, whether it's talks with the White House or how internal files are handled.
It fits the narrative they were building, absolutely. Consistent refusal to disclose.
Okay, let's shift to the other big controversy, Chicago. The immigration enforcement raids. This sounds like it got pretty heated, involving clashes with local officials, too.
Oh, it did. Some of the most combative exchanges happened here. Right away, she clashed with lawmakers on the committee when they asked about the basics of the operations.
Like, how many people were they even targeting? Did she have the numbers?
Well, that was a moment. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham asked her for a specific number. How many undocumented immigrants are estimated to be in Chicago? Basic context, right?
Yeah, you'd think she'd have that.
Apparently not. Sources say she seemed flustered, just replied vaguely, countless.
Countless. Not exactly data-driven.
No. And that kind of vagueness, it just fueled the idea that maybe these operations weren't very well planned or transparent.
But the main fight in Chicago was about cooperation, or lack thereof, with local government.
Yeah, she went right at Illinois officials, Governor Pritzker specifically, accused them of not cooperating with federal enforcement, which, highlights that constant tension between federal immigration goals and cities or states with sanctuary policies.
A legal and political battleground there.
Definitely. But then Democrats pushed her on how these raids were conducted, so specifically these reports about U.S. citizens being caught up in them.
Right, I remember reading about that. Allegations that citizens, even kids, were detained, maybe even zip-tied, during immigration raids. That's serious.
Extremely serious. It shifts the debate from immigration policy to, like, fundamental civil rights or law enforcement overreach. So they asked her, is the DOJ investigating these specific allegations? And she offered no specifics, nothing concrete about whether these serious claims were being looked into.
That seems evasive given the severity. And the whole thing kind of blew up personally between her and Senator Durbin.
It really did. The partisan anger just boiled over. Durbin, remember, he's from Illinois. He was pressing her hard on whether she consulted the White House before considering sending the National Guard to Chicago.
Okay, a legitimate oversight question.
You'd think, but Bondi just dropped the policy discussion entirely. She shot back at him personally, saying, I wish you love Chicago as much as you hate President Trump.
Wow. That's quite personal for a Senate hearing.
Highly unusual. And Durbin immediately fired back, reminding her point blank, it's my job to grill you. Really captured the whole mood. Him asserting oversight, her pushing back with personal politics.
So, wrapping it all up, after nearly 5 hours, what was the outcome? Did they get answers?
Well, the sources are pretty clear on this. By the end, Bondi had successfully avoided answering those key questions about her talks with Trump, about how career officials are being treated, about why Epstein materials aren't being released.
So lots of time spent, but the core questions about impartiality still hanging there. Deflected or just refused?
Pretty much. Either deflected with counterattacks or met with that consistent refusal to disclose.
So the big takeaway for you, the listener, this hearing didn't really change minds. It just solidified the trenches. Deep divisions over what the Justice Department is and should be.
Exactly. One side sees Bondi's tenure as, a necessary correction, fixing past wrongs, fighting crime. The other side sees a really alarming breakdown of norms, the rule of law potentially eroding.
Okay, so let's leave you with the final thought on this. Something to chew on, building from what we've heard. Given all these resignations of career officials and that very explicit goal Bondi stated, advancing President Trump's agenda, what happens next? How does shifting priorities towards political loyalty away from established institutional norms actually impact the day-to-day work? And, maybe more importantly, the public's trust in the entire federal law enforcement system?
Yeah, that question about institutional independence versus political loyalty and what the cost is, that really seems to be the defining issue for the DOJ in this era. It's something we'll likely be watching for a long time.
Indeed. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the source material today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.